I think it probably helps to give a little context on Roche as I answered this. So, Roche is not a very household name. So I think there are some of our peer companies, especially with the vaccinations you may have heard of. But Roche, I think, due to the nature of our work, as well as a very intentional decision, maybe you don't see as much in public. But in reality, we're the second biggest healthcare company in the world. So that's both on the pharmaceutical side, which is the biggest part of our business, and we're also the second biggest testing company. We also invest the most in R&D out of any healthcare company in the world. So this year it was over 12 billion in R&D. And so with that, comes with we've brought a lot of medicines to market that are by far the best treatment available. And we continue to have hundreds of more therapies in development. But with that kind of scale, it's a very different responsibility we have. And we've gone much beyond a single medicine or a single test as our focus to really think about how can we advance society. And so that's really our vision here at Roche, is that we think about how can we double the amount of benefit we give patients at half the cost of society. That's our vision, that if you talk to any employee across the world for Roche, that's what they'll share with you, and that's what organizes their work. From a culture perspective, that requires a very different workforce with a very different focus. There's many companies that are very successful at focusing on different goals, right? If your goal is to maximize profits, revenues, there's different ways to do that. But for us, if we want to achieve this, so not just doubling the benefit, but reducing the cost to society, it requires us to change our whole model so that we focus on how do we get as close to the customer, whether that's the patient or the doctor, as possible, and figure out what's stopping them from achieving that positive outcome and how can we help them get there. And so the culture we've been developing here for the last few years at Roche is how do we empower every single employee to have the confidence, the capability, and the desire to go spot these problems on their own, and then find the way to actually fix that problem to help improve healthcare. And that problem might be access to our medicines, in which case, of course, we can help. But in many cases, there's nothing at all to do with medicines or testing, but it's about how that particular part of the healthcare system is set up. And so that's our focus, and that's the culture we're looking to build, is how do we solve healthcare problems, and not focus so much on the medicines and the tests that we bring to market. It bears noting that Roche this year celebrated its 125th anniversary, right? It's quite an old company. And during that whole time, we've always been guided by the vision of our founding family. And this family, from the very outset, has always made the safety of our employees, the health of our employees, and the impact we have on the environment, like a concrete core part of our mission. And so our view on this is, being as old as we are, we've been here for 125 years. I'm sure we'll be here for another 125 years. How do we take the long view on how we run our business? Certainly, it's always cheaper in the short run to make maybe less sustainable decisions that maybe are less expensive and quicker. But if you take the view of being here for another 125 years, you can think about, what are the long-term ramifications of taking those shortcuts, and how do we structure a whole business so that this is the backbone, right? Sustainability is built in. We're not making trade-offs, but it's an expectation. And so you see that in many parts of what we do at the company, whether it's, how we choose vendors, and to make sure that the vendors also hold the highest ethical standards in how they run things. Whether it's something as simple as the cars our employees drive, how do we make sure that they have the least possible carbon footprint, and on and on. So there's some accolades that come out of that. So for example, we're proud that for multiple years we've been one of the top 3 sustainable companies in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. But it goes beyond awards. I mean, really, it's about the second part of your question about how we stay competitive. Again, taking short-term decisions that maybe are not so sustainable may seem like the right decision with a 5-year horizon, but ultimately there's always a price to pay, right? If you take shortcuts, at some point regulations catch up and you have to make changes. So from a competitiveness standpoint, if we go to where we think things are going, which is a bigger focus on the environment and how to run a sustainable business, and we build that in now, it makes the journey much smoother for all of us. and it avoids us having to do a start-stop constantly on the environmental front. So it really is, it's core to what we do because we think it's the right thing to do for society, but it also is the right thing to do for us from a competitive standpoint because it allows us to build a base that allows us to do our best work in other areas. I think if you go to any Roche site across the world, you'll notice that the passion, the capabilities, the knowledge of every employee is very high. And honestly, that's true for many of our peer companies as well. You go to Novartis, go to AstraZeneca, go wherever, and you're going to find some incredibly talented, driven people. Where we differ a bit here is thinking about how do we make the most fulfilling experience for our employees. So certainly there's things like, there's compensation, there's promotions, titles, etc. But as we've given it a really deep think, we've been thinking about what really motivates high performing individuals. And it's, what we believe it is getting a chance to work on something they find is impactful, something that makes a difference in society, and something where they have the freedom and autonomy to do what they want. And so that's what we really focused on from an employee standpoint and a culture standpoint. So how do we stop focusing so much on things like financial rewards and promotions? And those continue, so don't get me wrong, we still have those. But instead focus on giving employees different experiences so that they can continue scratching that itch to continue learning and growing. Giving employees an environment where they feel like they're having a direct impact on the outcomes. And then giving employees an opportunity to take ownership of things. So really reducing, how many management reviews and how many targets are being set by management, et cetera. And to really think about, well, what do you think needs to happen, and how do we position you best to achieve that? And so that's our philosophy for work, but that's also our philosophy for how we attract, engage, and retain the best talent, is to give them an environment where they feel excited and they feel like there's an experience that's unparalleled to any other company they could work at. So as I mentioned, this really is a backbone to everything we do. And honestly, it starts not with kind of CSR type initiatives, but it starts with the core work. So when we think about ESG, the first thing is how are we contributing to society with our business? So all the different therapies, medicines, data that we have, how can we make it accessible to as many patients as possible and actually achieve positive impacts? And that's a core part of what we've been working on for the last, I would say, 3 years, and is probably the biggest contribution we have to ESG. Beyond that, there's other more traditional forms of ESG we do that we think are very important. So we operate in 97 countries, and each of those countries, we employ employees from those countries. They're all based in those societies, and they all have a strong responsibility and desire to help. And so we invest in every country. So, if you look at where I just came from in Vietnam, we did many things like sponsoring health checks in rural areas where, there's a typhoon that came through, and we invested in ensuring that children could get their health checks that they needed. And their rations provided, things like that. We invested pretty heavily in childhood education initiatives, especially when it comes to pediatric patients that are under long-term care. And then if you pivot to Taiwan, it's the same driver, but there are different programs based on what Taiwan needs. So some of the things we've done recently are things like the ARC Foundation or the Ronald McDonald House. Again, the focus for us is always healthcare and children. But how we pull that through in every country depends on what the society we work in needs. And so that, in a nutshell, are some of the things that Roche has done to try to help society, beyond our core business, which is really about improving healthcare for everyone in those countries. Yeah, I don't presume to speak for all corporations or society. I can only speak for Roche and what how we approach it. And I often ask employees to think about all their affiliations in life and how they prioritize those, right? So I work at Roche. It's been 16 years. I really love this company and what it stands for. But if you zoom out, I'm an American citizen. I live in a certain society. I'm a father, and I'm a husband. And so those are all affiliations that are as important to me as Roche, if not more, right? And so when we think about what we do with our time at work, we should think about how does the work we do at Roche support those other important affiliations. So not just how do we not harm those things, but how do we actually improve them? How do we improve the country we live in? How do we improve the society that we're living in? And how do we do things that positively impact our families? And so that's my approach on how we do ESG at Roche, is to think about what are all the different obligations and affiliations you have in life, and how can your work at Roche support those equally as it supports the goals that we have at Roche. Yeah, so I've had a chance to be a student that takes part in this in a different country, and I've also had the opportunity to host students. And there's a few things that really excite me about it. So first and foremost, when students work on a problem, they bring a very different perspective. I think I believe Roche is a fairly innovative culture, but at the same time, as you get further away from school, we place a lot of self limitations on, this can't be done, or I've tried this, or that's not going to work. And I think, students often don't know better, quote unquote, and that opens up avenues that we may not see ourselves. And so I think that's the first thing, is I think oftentimes that perspective leads to solutions that we've never thought of, and kind of gives them some momentum, so we actually try them out. Secondly, there's just this energy and enthusiasm that students bring that just changes the workplace, right? Again, I think we have a very positive culture, and I like what we stand for and how we work at Roche. But at the same time, I'm always looking at how can we find a ways to amplify that even further. It's a big fire right now of enthusiasm at Roche Taiwan, but how can we make that an even bigger flame? And every time I work with a university team, I walk away with like an extra bounce in my step, and that's something that's intangible that you just can't put a price on. So yeah, really those two things is really around giving us a different perspective and bringing a different level of energy and enthusiasm to our work. I guess we're on this journey, right? So we, like, as I mentioned before, we're financially a very profitable company. We've got very good medicines and tests, et cetera. My hope for the future is to see how we follow through with this very ambitious goal we set for ourselves, to double the benefit to society, or double the benefit to patients for half the cost of society. And that, like, we're on the early part of that journey, but as we start to see more signs of success, like, that's what excites me, is to feel like we haven't just hit annual goals or quarterly goals, but instead we feel like we've made a contribution to society that's permanent and sustainable, and something that we can keep building on over the next coming years. That's what excites me about Roche right now. I always think about this, like, what do I wish I knew back then that I know now? And I think the two biggest things for me is to always have a sense of curiosity and to take initiative. So, curiosity, it's something about not always viewing problems in a very kind of one-dimensional or two-dimensional manner, and not exploring it, and really seeing if there are things that you find interesting, to go pursue them. Because not everything you do in life is about achieving an outcome, but sometimes it's about what you learn in that journey that may help you achieve an outcome down the road that is important to you. The initiative piece, I had the fortune of going to a fairly prestigious university, a lot of very talented and motivated people. And as you proceed in your career, you realize there's what separates the people that are very successful versus the ones that maybe are not so much, is the people that have ideas and act on them. Because a lot of talented, intelligent people have great ideas and great theories and things they'd like to change, but the ones that really make it and that make a difference are the ones that decide to do something about it. So I would say the two pieces of advice that I always carry with me is to always have a sense of curiosity, and to always take initiative on those very good ideas that I'm sure you all have. Yeah, I guess as you approach this project, I hope that every student carries the same inspiration that all of us have and the same intention all of us have. So first and foremost, we all live in Taiwan. We're all parts of our society, and we all have things that we care about. And so when you think about taking on this project, think about how can we approach this in a way that truly achieves something that improves society or improves healthcare. And if we achieve that, everything else kind of falls into place. But as you approach this is what I ask of you, is to give yourself fully and to think about how can we do something that really will transform society and healthcare.
那我这边我大学其实是读电脑科学的。那电脑科学毕业之后，其实在这上面有做过蛮多从技术上的一些工作，比方说软体测试啊，到软体开发这样子。那后来衍生到做技术上或者是策略上的顾问。那之后相对的我就回大学，就是去读研究所，去读 business。那在这个的前面也有机会花了半年去非洲做一些 sustainability 的一些顾问。那在这上面比较倾向是说，我们怎么样帮非洲的一个 country 去 build out 它的那个教育的 capability 这一块。那之后因为家庭因素，所以就是回到亚洲了。那在这个的时段里面，其实有花5年的时间在香港。那个时候也有经历，比方说就是像之前的那个 Yellow Umbrella Movement。那之后就加入了罗氏，就回台湾加入了罗氏。那在罗氏这边的话，我可以先大致上 share 一下，就是我在加入之前，其实这里的就是 IT 的 topic， 它比较倾向是说 handle 我们的云印的部门，就是 operations。那这边因为 IT 跟 technology 相对的也是走得很快，那所以我第一个 focus area 就是说，我们怎么样把 take IT from 一个 back office 的一个 operation take it more closer to the customer。这边中间有很多像 customer engagement 啊 digital 啊，或者是甚至一些创新的一些 ideas technology， 我们怎么样 bring it to our business， help support our business to co-create 一些 solution drive customer impact 这样子。然后又延伸到最近，其实最近我们公司在走一些global 的转型的 initiative。所以这一边我现在也是在带领一个跨部门的 team， 怎么样做一个数位转型，再加上 innovation 这一块就是创新，我们怎么样再做更多、更好、更快这样子。这边除了像刚才您说的那个 initiative 之外，其实罗氏一直以来在台湾40年都一直以来都有 focus 在这个永续的这个 topic。比方说我们这里有一个麦当劳叔叔之家，那这一边的话，我们有做一些赞助房间。那为什么会有房间？是因为有的时候有一些小朋友远距治疗需要来台北这边，可能从一些比较外地的地方，那他可能要来这边需要1天2天的时间，那他们需要一个地方来住。那这边我们在这一块上面有做赞助。我们在这里也有做一个所谓的每个月的大厨到你家。那这边的话当然就是我们员工每一个月都有机会去我们这个的 Ronald McDonald House 去做一个 cooking session， 煮一些好吃的东西给我们的这个 house 里面的这些小朋友吃。那当然除此之外，我们这边有在跟老人这边也有蛮多的互动。比方说我们每一年过年的时候，我们会有1对1的员工跟我们会去那个养老院，然后1对1的带老人去大卖场做年购。那这边的话就是之前也有一个蛮 touching 的 story， 就是我们基本上是做这一块，可是有一位同仁就是因为要想要陪伴我们的其中一位老人，那所以到最后他花了整天的时间在跟他陪伴去大卖场，然后又跟他聊天，然后又带他回家这样子。那除此之外，这边我们也是有就是帮助 这一些所谓的 underprivileged kids 去卖馒头。那至于说是像我们专业的这一块，我们有跟癌症基金会合作，那做一些摄影的一些比赛。那在这中间，我们是想要有机会的跟我们的病友团体去 promote， 让病友在这个的比赛之中可以得到勇气去那个抗癌这样子。我这边当然我之前也是一个学生，那我在学生实习的时候也有做过蛮多的建教合作，也有做过蛮多的 competition。那我在这里面有得到的一些学习，其实就是说，其实学生有很多不同的 idea， 然后那个时候我也蛮 appreciate 的那个机会，可以跟公司里面做 exposure。就像之前可能有谈到的，就是说在这里面，当然产出的这个 solution， 不管说 solution 也好，还是一个 methodology 也好，它是一个很重要的。可是更重要的就是说，你在这整个的经历上面，你有学到什么？你的 experience 是怎么样 ？What do you like? What don't you like? 你之后有什么样的东西你不想要再碰的？这个也是一个学习。那所以我自己是蛮期待我这边相对的有机会跟大学生合作来创办一些 co-create 一些 potential solution 的这样子的一个机会这样子。那至于说期待，当然就是说我们也是期待说，相对的，因为学生某种程度他们有很多的 energy， 有很多的 creativity， 我也想要借此机会有更多的 inspiration。那相对的这些 energy 带进来公司里面，我们公司里面其实已经有蛮多的不同的 energy， 比方说现在有很多不同的 outside in 的 initiative。那我也想要借这个机会，再让我们再更加速的去看说我们怎么样可以对社会上面做更多的 impact。我觉得某种程度 ACT 这一边就是我这边对这个 program 有认知，相对的我也知道这个 program 的 set up 是很好的，中间有机会让学生自己去组 team， 到说我们怎么样跟 corporate 做一个互动这样子，所以反而我在这上面我会觉得学生会有足够的 preparation 去理解这个题目是什么，是怎么样做出来一个又 inspiring 又有 creativity 的一个 solution。至于说所以背景这边反而我不会有太大的 concern， 我会比较倾向说，那你这边如果对议题第一个你对议题有没有兴趣？那有兴趣的话，相对的，我觉得这一块反而是一个很重要的一个 motivation， 一个 inspiration to do more。那再来的话，我觉得就是说，在这整个 journey 上面，当然到最后产出的那个 solution 是很重要的。可是在这中间，你有没有机会去做一些更了解你自己想要什么的东西，你自己想要学到什么东西？不管是说跟公司互动，还是说更了解。比方说我们这里的医疗的一个 ecosystem，healthcare 的 ecosystem， 或者是说，我们怎么样跟公司里面每一个部门去更了解每一个部门在做什么，更了解公司里面所谓的leadership team， 他们头脑里面在想什么可以来再给你一些启发，说你之后毕业的时候，你想要在做什么样的事情，你想要 focus 在哪一个 area， 你之后想要当什么样的一个。不管说主管也好，或者是 you as an individual as a whole 这样子，对，所以又回到刚才的问题这一边，就是说，其实背景这一块，我觉得它是很重要的，可是它只是其中一块，更多的是学生这边有没有 energy， 有没有 motivation to do this， and what is that learning that you want to get out of this entire end-to-end journey 这样子。在这上面的 impact， 我觉得第一个当然就是 focus 在我们社会上的 healthcare 这一块。那尤其是说那个像我们大众的那个百姓这一块，不管是说从一个比方说好了，失智症 Alzheimer disease 这一边，到说你说 patients 也好，病患也好，或者是说 caregiver， 这个 patient 的周边的这一些家庭也好。那当然我们由这个 program 出来，我们希望可以有一个 positive impact to all these individuals， 这个是当然一块。那怎么样实现这一块？当然我们从一个螺丝的角度，我们这里有我们的蛮多的 experience 跟 expertise， 那我们这边也想要就是说让学生这边有蛮多的 energy 跟 inspiration 跟我们坐下来，怎么样大家一起来创造更美好的一个 solution， 可以带到我们的病友团体，你说病友团体也好，病人也好，或者说 caregiver 这边 have more impact to the well-being of their lives。另外一块的 impact 其实已经开始了，就是说我们罗氏同仁这一边，大家也对今年的这一个 event 也有很大的关注性，也有很大的 excitement 跟 energy。比方说我们在出题的这一块，大家已经很踊跃的来投稿。那所以我们现在其实再来，我们就是怎么样把这些题目再给它收纳一下，让这些题目可以让我们的不管说大学生也好，还是公司的同仁伙伴也好，有一个更好的一个理解这样子。那在 ESG 这边，其实我们现在做的事情一定是离不开的比方说眼科好了，因为现在很多3C 的产品出来，导致于说眼科的疾病越来越可能会越来越早化。那相对的这些事情，我们怎么样去 tackle 去 resolve， 这个就是变成我们的一个社会的 issue。所以我们在做这一件事情，其实不管是说是 from a interest of Roche， 或者是 interest of 社会，这其实都是息息相关的。我觉得这边刚才也说过了，其实没有其他的，只不过就是说也是很有荣幸的可以参加这一个 program。那在这里面我们也蛮期待有很多不同的学习，跟大学生跟 program director 有很多不同的 inspiration collaboration 这样子。那我也希望在这里面大学生也有机会更了解我们公司在做什么样的事情，在社会上面是可以 create 什么样的一个 impact， 然后借此机会也是可以再多了解自己，对自己之后的 career planning 也好，可以再做多一点点的 self reflection 这样子。这是希望我在这个 program 里面有机会大家可以得到的一些self reflection 跟想法这样子。